Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, presented by Cattle, Season 4, Episode 37. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Our special guest this week was destined, it would seem, to do what he does. Jake Fries, managing director and part owner of Sussex Ice Cream, born and raised in a dairy farm outside Sussex, New Brunswick. Jake's always been connected to the agriculture community. He's now a practicing lawyer, having graduated from Dal, your university. Yep. He's practicing lawyer, continuing to work with his dad, Dave, and they make a bespoke high caliber, high fat, amazing ice cream, a Sussex Ice Cream. And he tells us about the processes and the challenges and the opportunities. And, you know, he's the super premium category. And just his descriptions of the ice cream had me kind of like, I want to turn the mic off and just go, you know, fly to New Brunswick and get
find the ice cream. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's sold in the Atlantic only, unfortunately, but hoping that at some point it'll be sold elsewhere in Canada. Ice cream is a tough business, but I mean, these people, the Fries family is very dedicated to ice cream and quality. So it's always great to hear.
Well, and we've got local dairies in different parts of the country. There's some here in Ontario. I'm sure there's others in Quebec. But it would be nice. I think he said he might even be extending some distribution through Sobeys to Halifax. So I'll be back in Halifax this summer. So I'm gonna go hunting for it because my New Brunswick roots are calling.
Of course.
Let's just put it that way.
You got roots everywhere. You're spreading.
I'm proud to be in this country. We're recording this a little later in the day, a little later than usual. Now you just rolled off. You're wearing a tie, and you just finished testifying, I believe.
I'm wearing a tie just for you, Michael.
Oh, thank you.
Just for you.
It's for our listeners. We're describing it. Now, this was, I think, your 22nd time testifying.
Yeah. Who's counting?
And who's counting? But
this was my second time before the Industry and Technology Committee, which is a bit different. It operates very differently. Mm-hmm. Sessions typically would last 1 hour, and parties would actually be given 6 to 12 minutes, depending on how many MPs, and you go through a session pretty quickly. With Industry and Technology, it's 2 hours,
wow.
And you basically have two witnesses. So they do that because they really want to dig deep. They really want witnesses to provide a lot of information. So not only that I've been able to, I was trying to answer questions the best I can, but I have some homework. Because I was asked by MPs to provide copies of certain reports that we published in the past, and so I have to submit that probably over the next couple of days. And
now you said you were one of two people. Who else was there? Who else was there testifying?
It was me, and so first of all, it was about Bill C-352. So the amendment to the Competition Act. It's basically a private member's bill, and the private member is Jagmeet Singh, or proposing changes to the act itself in relation to fines and the power you give to the Bureau itself.
Okay.
And basically it was me and Pierre-Carl Pelado, who's the CEO of Québecor. So, and his brother was with him as well.
Right. So more on competition than in generally broad speaking food.
Yeah,
category.
It's not just food. Yeah. So obviously a lot of people, Pierre-Carl Pelado he's one of the most powerful business person in the province of Quebec. So obviously he knows a little bit about competition.
Quebecor, for those across Canada who may not know, he's CEO, chairman, whatever, big kahuna at Le Grand Fromage, as we might say.
So he competes against Bell and Rogers and TELUS.
TELUS, yeah.
And so he's out there advocating, and so he did talk about a lot of non-food issues, and I focused mostly. I was invited to talk about the agri-food industry in particular.
All right,
but not just retail. It was, we did talk about processing quite a bit, much more so than I was expecting, which is really nice because I don't think that food processing gets a whole lot of attention in Canada.
Well, it gets a lot of attention on this show, so maybe they're listening. Hopefully, we spread the word and the folks get to listen. And let's move on. Let's move on to the news. You've been posting on social media, and I think we're all interested to watch what's happening back where I was over in Europe. Paris in France, they're calling a snap election. We seem to be steering to the right. Now, you posted some interesting comments, fairly apolitical, just your observations that this may have some impact on the agricultural sector, kind of a more focus on the population or populace in the rural parts of Europe. Talk about what you're thinking here about, and if there's any implications for the global trade and any implications for Canada.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, of course, there are many issues affecting Europe right now, including immigration. And I think it had a lot to do with what's going on right now. The movement towards the right, not the far right, like some media is saying. I've never been comfortable with the far right terminology. I don't know about you, but it is moving right. And because I think that there's more of a nationalistic sense that can be seen in Europe. In fact, I was just in Europe a couple of weeks ago. I'm back next week, and you were there last week. And I don't know about how you felt about what's going on there, but there seems to be a more nationalistic flavor in Europe. But since January, we've seen many protesters going to Brussels, and those protesters were farmers, and farmers were pretty discontent and worried about the future of their business. I mean, the EU has gone really far in terms of surveilling and supporting agriculture. For example, I mean, as a farmer, you were told what to grow and what practices to follow, and they actually had satellites taking pictures of fields, and if pictures weren't consistent with what was promised, farmers were getting visitors or visits from authorities. So you can tell that things that testimony came from that information came from a testimonial given by a German farmer. And when I read that over the weekend, I thought, "Wow, this is really."
I saw that. I was pretty shocked. I mean, that's a lot to deal with. That's a lot of, what do we call that? That's pretty hands-on government.
Exactly. And so a lot of farmers felt that they've lost control over what's been happening, and so that's why I think that there's been a revolt. And that revolt, I think, is reflected in the election. The France move is I think, very interesting, because I think a lot of people are wondering, why did Macron call an election? He didn't have to. I don't know how you're reading this yourself, but to me, it's pretty simple. They're basically Macron is given the right. Marine Le Pen, who's the leader of the right, is giving Marine Le Pen a rope so she can hang herself with if she wins the election, the legislative election, because Macron wouldn't lose his job. He would remain president until 2027, regardless of the outcome. But if Marine Le Pen takes over government, they'll probably have 3 years. And I think Macron's bet is that he would see the right, led by Marine Le Pen, just not do well at all over 3 years, so he can actually increase his chances of being reelected as president of the public.
Very, very.
Is that how you read it? That's how I read it, because to me, he didn't have to call an election. He's not losing his job. He can still govern. He could actually keep his prime minister. But now, if he loses the election on June 30th, he would have to appoint a new prime minister on the other side. He would have to co-govern. And co-governance is impossible in France. Impossible.
Let me ask you this question. Given the agenda of our show, with this kind of steer to the right, which doesn't sound like a hard right
in France,
given in France and elsewhere, do you see any implications for international trade? If we're stiffening up the borders, we'll let them decide how to manage their borders. But in terms of international trade with Canada, do you see any implications from that?
I'm concerned about the EU for sure. I don't know if the project is still championed by someone. I mean, you have to look at Germany and France. I mean, that's basically it. And I would say that right now, both parties...
Food-wise, Italy, I'd look at Italy too, right?
Well, yeah, sure. Italy's part of it. Well, Italy's part of the G7, but it's not as influential in Europe as Germany and France.
That's true.
For unity in particular. And so if you don't, because Italy can do its own thing and will want to do its own thing. When you think about unity in Europe, you need Germany and France. I mean, they because everyone, when it was created, everyone saw both countries gaining from the EU, but that's not what we're hearing from the electorate. The electorate is starting to say, you know what, this project may not work for us. We saw UK leave. They seem to be doing okay. I mean,
I don't know about that. I'd question that. I think if the general consensus of people I've talked to is that was an own goal, to use the football analogy, that they're anyway. So I'm not sure they'd make that same decision looking back.
But I mean, when you look at the GDP numbers coming out of the UK, I think they came out today. Actually, it's so the economy is idle. I would say yes, but again, Europe is not is messy right now, politically and economically, still. And so there's a lot of things going on there. But when you look at food security in Europe, I don't think things are going well. I mean, I actually provided some stats on X recently about the hog industry. The hog industry, so production of hogs have gone down 25%, which is a lot. The production of pork in Europe has gone down 3 million metric tons, which is equivalent to a quarter of America's total exports. So it's a lot. And with grain production, we expect in 2024 to see Europe produce less than the 5-year average, probably 4.4%.
Now, is climate wrapped up in this, or what is
climate is certainly wrapped up in this? But you see, in Europe, you have many restrictions when it comes to the use of pesticides, the use of different inputs that would allow yields to increase. And so when a drought hits a region,
GMOs, you're talking GMOs basically.
Genetic engineering, but we're starting to see some leniency in Europe. They're starting to become a little bit more comfortable because they see that America is producing very well. Yeah. And right now they're putting the continent of Europe in a food insecure position. And when you have 500 million consumers, that's not a good idea.
Sticking with Europe, I noticed that the avian flu has popped itself up in Belgium, I believe, right? So, Well, actually, no, they did some work on the avian flu in the Netherlands, actually. So they actually took 1,800 hens. They tested the avian flu on 1,800 chickens, essentially. And so I think they had 1,800 chickens with the avian flu. They gave those chickens the avian flu with a vaccine being developed, and another 1,800 with no vaccines. And every single chicken with the vaccine survived. Okay.
So that's a very good sign. So
this is good news.
It's very good news. So for the first time, and the study started in October of last year. So for the first time, we actually have perhaps a solution to the avian flu, which we don't have right now.
Yeah, I mean, the only solution now is to slaughter them all, right? I mean, there's no solution, which is
so that's a big deal. That's a huge deal. Absolutely.
All right. Great news.
So it's great. So when would a vaccine be available? We don't know, but there's also that highly pathogenic avian flu affecting dairy herds now. So would that vaccine be effective for dairy? We don't know.
Interesting. Yeah. Let's turn our minds and attention to La Ville de Montreal. So I guess there was some dust up.
Did you see that in the news?
Well, I saw a couple of things about Montreal. I saw some terrible weather. It was unfortunate, but I also saw that.
Hence why we had Terrace Gate, because they needed to put
covers,
protectors.
Right. So what happened? So, it's tough to be a restaurateur at any time. You don't get a big long run. I mean, Montreal's gonna, the Just for Laughs festival's gone, That went bankrupt. So, in terms of bringing customers in and, making your dollar in the restaurants, apparently some of these guys got shut down at the last minute. But then I saw today that they were sanctioned, those officers or enforcement officers with sanctions.
They were sanctioned, yeah.
What happened in Montreal last weekend?
So Peel Street is under construction, okay? So a portion of Peel Street
that's basically a perennial statement, by the way, between Peel Street and St. Catherine. You could say that at any time in my entire life. You could say that.
I know. But
like the gardener,
with the construction happening on Peel, there are 4 restaurants that needed to move their tents, protecting tables, their terrace, okay? 57 centimeters, okay? That's so cars could go through with no danger, okay? That's my understanding of the situation, all right? And so they were told, restaurant operators, 4 of them, were told to move the tents. They did move the tents, but not sufficiently enough. So that was, I think, 2 weeks before the Grand Prix. They were told that inspectors would come back a week before to make sure that they're in compliance. They never came at all a week before. They decided to come on Friday night of the Grand Prix at 9:00 at night when all restaurants are full, okay? All restaurants are full. And then these 2 inspectors came in and decided to shut down the 4 restaurants because they were not in compliance. Yeah.
What's behind this? I mean, it's outrageous as you describe it for a whole bunch of reasons. But is there something brewing in Montreal that has this kind of enforcement?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things. One, there was a huge fire in Old Montreal last year, which actually killed 7 people. I believe it was 7 or 8. I can't remember. Mm-hmm. But since then, the fire department has been really, really strict in terms of bylaws. So that's one argument. The other argument is the Grand Prix itself.
Yeah.
So some people are saying the plant administration is not necessarily comfortable with the Grand Prix, and in fact, not comfortable with anything that the Grand Prix represents: capitalism, gas, cars,
fast cars,
fast cars, noise,
fun,
yeah,
entertainment.
So that's the other argument being shared right now in Montreal, and to a certain degree, there is, of course, some arguments there that is valid for sure.
Yeah. All right, my goodness, I love Montreal though. I have to say, I do love Montreal.
Montreal is a bit of a mess. I mean, if I've been to Montreal, we were both in Montreal recently. I mean, some parts of Montreal aren't doing great.
I would agree, though. I would agree here. We're in a mess, too, here in Toronto. I mean, I tried to get into a meeting yesterday and some dump truck hits a bridge on the QEW, and then 2 trucks ram into each other. And downtown Toronto is, well, you and I have been in an Uber, gone nowhere for an hour and a half. So, before we cast too much shade on Montreal, at least you move. So, something there. And the bagels are really amazing. So,
yes, that's right. And smoked meat.
And poutine stuff. And poutine. And great restaurants. Shout out Chuck Hughes.
Yes, that's right.
Let's speak. Okay, here's a rough segue. Let's talk about beer. I had a great beer at Garde Manger, Chuck's restaurant. And I guess I'm in the minority now.
How much was your beer?
I can't remember. How much is fun?
Because I paid. Of course you don't remember.
Oh my God, that's still bugging you how much we paid for that meal. You're hilarious. I'm paying next
Jesus,
time.
I'm still paying for it.
Quality.
My youngest tuition, the meal we had together in Montreal, I don't know.
Next time I'll just get you to give him a kidney and we'll just be done with it. How about that?
Which one?
Let's talk about beer sales. So I've been hearing from a number of different sources that beer sales are under pressure. Now we've got some numbers here where they're down 3.5% so far 24.
So year to date, and last year they were down 3.6%. So now, there's something going on there for sure.
Now, I think of three things going on. I want to get your opinion. So, thing one is weather. Now, on the on the west coast of the country, it's been cold and wet, so they're just not selling a lot of beer. I mean, it's a situational thing. The weather.
Yep.
Here, it's not that warm. Summer, we've had a week of warm weather. It's not that. It's like in the 20s, low 20s here, high 18s. So weather. So that comes and goes every year. If it was hot last year versus this year, you're going to sell less beer. That's just how it goes. Two is you've got a generational impact where the kids are doing Gen Alpha as we kind of start to, well, they're too young to drink, but the younger, the kids are just drinking less beer. And that, I think, is nested in, I don't know if it's health. I think a lot of people say health. I think it's just such a variety of choice. I mean, when you and I were growing up, I had, either Saint-Aunt or Blue in a stubby. Yeah. That was my choice. And now the kids of course, who are legal drinking age, have got, mixed cocktails and ready to drinks. They got such a wide variety other than beer. And then the third thing is, I think, the demographics are changing, not in the direction of consumption of alcohol. So if you take all this, okay, let's add as a footnote, a bonus, cannabis consumption. I don't really see them being all that connected, the cannabis. I never bought that. What's your, of those three things or more, what do you think's driving these changes? And do you think it's permanent and the beer folks are going to be having to adjust to lower volumes?
No, I think I agree with you. I think competition is really clearly affecting demand for beer. Also, of course, choice is a key issue. Younger generations will revolve around other products, and of course, you have to think about cannabis. Cannabis is now more socialized, so I suspect there's some of that going on there.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
But I do think that kids just don't drink as much, and they just do other things. Absolutely, and so I think the beer industry is in for a rough ride for the next little while. Yeah.
Well, and I think I turn my mind to as well the nature of immigration from countries or from parts of the world that don't drink alcohol.
Yeah.
That's gonna put a dent in it. So let's watch that carefully because there's lots going on, of course, here in Ontario around beer, where our premier has decided to accelerate.
I think it's great that Doug Ford invested $1 billion of taxpayers' money on a market that is shrinking.
Well, okay, let's talk about this briefly because it's both interesting political stuff and interesting consumption. So for those, those not in Ontario, basically there is a monopoly that was held by the beer store.
The beer store.
And back in the time tunnel, the beer store was a monopoly owned by Labatt's and Molson, which were Canadian companies.
It was domestic,
It was meant to keep international foreign beer companies at bay. They got bought, so it didn't work. And then, we find ourselves with foreign companies having a monopoly, semi-monopoly in this province. So then, basically Doug Ford said, I'm going to run and I'm going to break that monopoly up. But there's a big penalty in place. Some say the penalty dollars would have never been paid because the government would have just tagged them with some fees somewhere else. And that the money, the $250 million or the $1 billion is just nonsense, that money would never get paid. And it's wildly popular when you poll it. Do you want more access to beer in convenience stores? Good for small business.
Yeah.
So good for accessibility for beers. And in a province, look at the province like Quebec. You go to the Dépanier and you get a nice beer. You don't have rampant alcoholism in Quebec.
You go to the dentist and you get a beer.
Well, so it is the modernization of alcohol consumption, not without, as is always the case with the Ford government, some sort of, look like it's a ploy with, for votes.
Oh, it should have happened a long time ago, really.
Well, the Catherine Wynne government and governments before hers signed the big deal because let's talk about what is really interesting is recycling. And I know you say it's done elsewhere, but I would argue that the Ontario bottle recycling program is one of the best in the world. And, we're going to have to do without that basically as this monopoly gets broken up. So there's some, I don't know, collateral damage or whatever. Anyway, so there. Yeah. I said my piece. All right, before we get to our great interview, we got a great interview with Jake Fries, talk about ice cream. I scream, you scream. Let's hear Cattle, not Scream, but talk about their great offerings right now. Ever feel like the world of ratings and reviews needed a superhero? Well, enter Cattle, the caped crusader with Canada's largest, most diverse, and daily active consumer panels. That's right, Cattle is not your average podcast sponsor. So why choose Cattle? Because Cattle excels in consumer insights from your consumer while also blazing trails in the realm of ratings and reviews, pioneering the future landscape of user-generated content. Beyond the valuable syndicated receipt data, they stand as unparalleled collector of reviews at scale, irrespective of category or price point. A testament to their impact, partnerships with giants like Walmart, Canadian Tire, and more. Visit AskCattle.com now for an exclusive The Food Professor podcast listener discount on your first review or research campaign today. That's AskCattle.com.
Well, this week we have the pleasure to host another great guest from a family business in our region in New Brunswick. Jake Fries, managing director and owner of Sussex Ice Cream. And so I had the pleasure to meet Jake a few weeks ago at an event in Fredericton, and was immediately really impressed by the story. So thought of inviting Jake on our show. Welcome, Jake.
Thank you, Sylvain. Thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to our discussion.
Hey, Jake, is that last name, is that a nom de plume, or were you destined to run an ice cream company?
Just blessed with it. I get that all the time, how perfect
I'm sure
that
you
is.
do. Yeah, I'm sure you do. Yeah. So you were born to be in this business for sure. Well, tell us about the story behind Sussex Ice Cream. How did it happen? What's the story? And what brands do you carry? And how big is your market?
Yeah, so we started as a small family-owned business based out of, well, you guessed it, Sussex, New Brunswick. So my father, Dave, he was a sixth-generation dairy farmer. So he started the company with my mother around 2008. And the reason he started it was he was kind of disappointed that there was no really high-quality ice cream around made with New Brunswick dairy as a dairy farmer himself. So he took an ice cream making course at the University of Guelph. He bought some equipment and just started making ice cream. So I started attending farmers markets with him when I was around 12 years old, and we've been making it. So we actually started off as Fries's Ice Cream and changed it a few years in. And, you know, you mentioned the name earlier. People still say to me all the time, that's so perfect. Why did you change it? Why isn't it Fries's Ice Cream? And we actually changed it because there was another Sussex Ice Cream that existed here in the community about 50 to 60 years ago. And they had a stellar reputation for quality ice cream. Eventually that company was acquired and shut down. There's still branches of it around, but Sussex Ice Cream was no more. So we just wanted to kind of pick up where they left off, take on that mantle there. And we have seniors who try our ice cream all the time, tell us, like, this is how ice cream used to be. This is how I remember it. And so that's
really
great to hear.
Wow.
And yeah, so it's just kind of an homage to, you know, on our
comparing
logo, it
with
says,
the old Sussex Ice Cream, you mean?
Exactly. Yeah. The old Sussex Ice Cream, or just older ice cream products in general, back to a time when there's just, fewer ingredients on the label, more focus on like a high fat product and less air incorporated. So we're kind of proud to take that name back on and kind of revive that. So then over the past few years, I mentioned we started out in farmers markets. Over the past few years, we've kind of evolved from like a small hobby business to a year-round endeavor, like with a handful of just fantastic employees. And we've made a big push for more retail distribution. So we're now available in about 50 Sobe stores around Atlantic Canada and 50 independent retailers as well.
That's great. So over 100 retail outlets in the Atlantic.
Yes.
That's great. Yeah. And so how many flavors do you have? Like, what kind of products do you have? Do you have just hard ice cream and that's it? And how many flavors do you have?
Yeah, so it's all hard ice cream. We've got about 6 to 7 flavors available in the 500 milliliter format at all times.
And what's your most popular?
Our most popular flavor would be honeycomb. So that is kind of a unique product. And if you've ever had the inside of a crunchy bar, like it's a sponge toffee that's incorporated in the ice cream. And so it adds some really nice texture, crunch, and it starts to sort of melt into the ice cream a little bit. So it leaves caramel ribbons in. And that has been our top seller almost since we started.
Yeah, it sounds delicious just hearing about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. People rave about that one. And then we've also gotten a scooping tub line. It's 11.4 liter tubs. And we usually offer 20 to 24 flavors in that, in that line in any given summer.
So how do you come up with these ideas, these flavors? How do you develop, how does your R&D process look like?
Well, many of them have been there since 2008, since, my father either, got a recipe from somewhere else or made the recipe himself. And then since then it's been, added over time, something new. So like anything, it starts with an idea, and then we do a test batch and we just workshop it until it kind of suits our tastes. So when we found that works really well so far, we usually try and incorporate as many local ingredients and local produce, as much of that as possible as well.
Take us inside your four walls of what a typical day looks like at Sussex Ice Cream. So you've got heritage, you've got a strong brand, you're starting to get grocery distribution, you're probably already ramped up for summer, which is no doubt, I don't know, you tell me, probably your biggest season. But what does it look like? What do you spend your time on, and how do you make decisions about how to spend your time as a small business?
Yeah, so definitely this time of year, summer is definitely our biggest season. I'll say that. And so this time of year, inside the four walls, things look a little bit hectic. Not going to lie, but still, like it's just a magnified version of what we do all year now, since we've started, serving so many retail locations when we are kind of in operation for 12 months. So It's just a bigger push to that. And so, on any given day, there's one part of our team that's busy serving customers, lining up orders, delivering product, just talking to retailers, making sure everybody's stocked up and gets what they need. And especially in the summer, there's obviously orders come through with a lot more urgency sometimes, even the scooping customers as well. They've got customers to serve, and they don't want families coming out
screaming for ice cream.
Screaming for ice cream, exactly. Yeah. So that one part of the team is busy doing that, and the other part of the team is just busy producing and trying to make sure we don't run out to the best of their abilities. We're still a fairly small operation, so our trusty single ice cream maker, it's running all day, nonstop. We try and keep as minimal downtime as possible.
Sure.
And then we do also make a lot of our stuff in house, like that a lot of other producers wouldn't do. So we make our own mixes from scratch, meaning we start with fresh cream and sugar, and we build our ice cream base up from there. We don't get our ice cream base in the bag. We make it all ourselves, and we can tailor different recipes in that way. And we make a lot of our own inclusions too. So part of the team will be busy making like that honeycomb candy, and the honeycomb ice cream is made in house. They may be making like baked crisp for like rhubarb crisp ice cream, or peanut butter ripple, things like that. So that's where most of the time gets spent, I would say. There's also a lot of time that goes into cleaning and keeping records, as boring as that is to talk about. But we do have a federal health license to maintain. It allows us to sell out of province.
Well, actually, Jake and I met at a food safety conference. So obviously it was all about regs and compliance. So yes, it is important to do that as a food company.
Jake, how much of that time for you and kind of the management team, how much do they spend on compliance and you've got a super premium product. So all the things you're describing about the manufacturing process make a lot of sense. Start from scratch, super premium category if you're gonna win. But do you were at this conference? Were you there to learn? Were you there to share and talk about how other people handle it? What and how do you think about these regs?
I was there to learn, and you're right. A lot of our time does go into ensuring compliance, which is kind of a push and pull, because you want to make sure that you're keeping things as efficient as possible. And some of these things necessarily slow down efficiency, because you have to have somebody recording lot numbers, creating lot numbers, production sheets. You have to have somewhere to keep the records. But it's just a necessary part of operations now. When we started out, like I said, in 2008, and we had one dedicated room in the family house to doing this, and it was a municipal inspection, and that was it, one inspection per year. And so long as we maintained that room for that purpose to a certain standard, then that was acceptable. But then if you want to grow your markets, you have to think about, okay, what is the next level up need? The farmers market's okay with the municipal inspection. But if you go talking to Sobeys or something like that, they need something a little more. And so to grow our retail market, we did take on a few years ago the federal inspection and get our federal license under the Safe Food for Canadians Act and regulations, which there was some talk about that at this conference Sylvain and I attended. And it is a higher standard for sure. And even just, it's still relatively new legislation. So even working through something like that to see what the requirements are takes time. But again, if you want to go to the next level, you need to take time. And then there's and I came to the conference mostly to learn about this, but there's even a level above that that's certified by third party organizations, of course, GFSI and SFQ and all these different organizations that will, other, retailers require and is required usually for international export. So that's what I was there to learn about.
All right. Well, let's change direction a little bit. So talk about marketing, and then let's get specific about, how you engage in the local community and what you do and how you get support and how that starts to translate into market share and kind of hopefully ripples outwards as you try to grow the business across the country.
Yeah. So we do participate in community events from time to time when we're available to do so. I would say a lot of our focus on community engagement is on partnerships, though. So we do a fair bit of collaboration with local businesses and local suppliers to support the local economy. Yep. So we have a flavor called Piccadilly Pick Me Up, which uses coffee from a local roaster, Piccadilly Coffee, right?
This is a tough interview for me because all I can think of now is eating ice cream. So,
we'll have to see if we can get some shipped out in your direction.
I think Sussex Ice Cream is Canada's Ben and Jerry's. What do you think?
Yeah, there you go.
Except better and not owned by a big multinational.
Exactly.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think there's a lot of support for community-based. I mean, you're very local, and do you have like an events team? Is that at the scale you'd like to be at? And you talk about partnerships. I'm just trying to get into some of the trade craft about how you grow such an organic brand from, not quite from a kitchen, but pretty close and start to make a dent and get some market share in a pretty competitive space, right?
Yeah. So there's certainly no events team at this level. Hopefully sometime soon that would be great. But no, it's more so just keeping engaged with local suppliers, conversations. There's different marketing opportunities, right? So like last year, the local brew pub here, Sussex Ale Works, they made a rhubarb beer with our rhubarb crisp ice cream, and we kind of marketed that together. I think
rhubarb is making a comeback. I'm seeing more. I don't know about you, Michael, but I'm seeing more rhubarb flavored things out there.
Jake, what do you think? Is it a flavor of the future, or what? Why are you guys so focused on it?
I think it's kind of it's something that we can get that's grown locally, right? That's one thing, but it's also, and I don't know, it just feels like kind of an Atlantic Canadian product. I know it's not, but rhubarb crisp or strawberry rhubarb crisp, it's just kind of, it's a little nostalgic too. I think it's kind of seems like an old fashioned flavor, which again, that we kind of tend to lean into that sometimes. So I think it's making a comeback, and that's one of the ones we've got a lot of great feedback on. People seem to love that flavor. Yeah.
Now, if I track back to the past number of years, we don't want to get into a history lesson here about COVID. We talked enough about it during COVID. But, you must have, those are tougher days, right? So you had, suddenly the lockdowns and, oh my goodness, how are we going to continue business? But then it really picked up. What were some of the challenges and opportunities you faced, and how'd you get through them? What'd you learn coming out of the wackiness that was the COVID era?
Yeah, it was certainly an odd time. And we did see some impact on our sales, negative impact, I guess, like especially with the scooping tub retailers throughout the pandemic, of course, because people were staying in. They weren't, going out to ice cream shops to all hang out together. So, but it's luckily that wasn't our only product line, right? We have the 500 ml pint size as well. And I don't know if it was a result of people going out to eat at restaurants less, or like, less of a budget for, vacationing, but it seemed like people were more prepared to spend money on like higher quality, like the best possible treats for themselves at home. So we actually did see things pick up a little bit there, luckily on that end of things. And as a result of that, we were able to place more emphasis on that 500 mil retail distribution. That's actually like where the relationship with Sobeys grew out of. So as a result of that, like our business is more stable, revenue's a little better distributed over a 12-month period. But if we had to double down and, kind of pulled at our hair and said, oh no, we're losing, this amount of sales on our scooping tubs, then we would have kind of missed the opportunity to grow into that. And then on the back end, like you mentioned, after the pandemic, everything blew up again. So the market share for the scooping tubs, caught right back up. So I suppose the lesson we learned is there's always a market. You just have to be prepared to be a bit flexible, find it if things don't go as you planned.
Mm. So I guess looking at the future, what's your vision for Sussex Ice Cream over the next 5-10 years or so? Where do you think the company is going to go?
Yeah, right now we're in a really interesting place and kind of a challenging place where we're more or less maxed out in our production capacity. We're doing our best with it, but we simply don't have the equipment or the space to keep up right now. So we're just in the process. We're right in the middle of assessing like the tools and the equipment we need to move forward in a bigger way. And we're looking forward to doing that, as soon as possible, but sometime within the next 2 years for sure. Another thing that we've thought a lot about is we are just a factory. So we'd love to have some kind of physical presence for visitors, like a storefront, just a place where people can visit and
like going retail
and see us in action. Yeah, exactly. Because we have limited opportunities right now to actually interact with the end consumer. It's a big tourist town. Yeah, especially we've got the Atlantic the Atlantic Balloon Festival here. And like the Sussex Flea Market is a big event that pulls in people from all over Atlantic Canada. So the month of August and September tends to be there's quite a few tourists moving through. So we'd love to have a storefront just to be able to take advantage of that. Yeah. And it would just strengthen the brand so much more to have a physical presence. So we're looking forward to that. And other than that, we're just, plan to keep innovating on flavors and featuring local ingredients.
I guess, when you look at scalability, it's always been an issue with SMEs, and that's where you're at right now, clearly. I'll ask you a question. Do you think that, in Canada, it's easy to scale up from where you are to and reach the next level? Is there something that perhaps you would recommend governments or anybody to look into when it comes to helping small SMEs like yours to really broaden the scope of their market?
Yeah, there is a network, I know, of government agencies that will provide some level of assistance. One thing we've run into is I guess it's the problem of not knowing what you don't know, if that makes sense. So the challenges that it takes to get to the next level are to me or to someone at a smaller size, they probably seem more complex than they are, obviously, to somebody who's already solved it. But the problems are so niche that you can't just go up on Google and figure out how to fix that problem in this place at this time. So
because your situation is so unique and different.
Exactly. And unique to the location you're in, unique to the place and time you're in. So one thing, Jill, just giving you an example, is we're dealing with distribution right now. And obviously, as you go from servicing your town to an area within 50 kilometers of your town, to your province, to now we're at PEI, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick. We're doing direct store delivery to almost everywhere. We just started partnering with somebody to help us out with deliveries to Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia a bit. but how to get that distribution in a way that is cost effective for your business is not something we've had to solve before. And so I guess an answer to your question, if there was some kind of network or partnership that could specifically like troubleshoot these issues or offer support for these issues, that I would love to see something like that.
And so I guess as a last question, and I'll throw it back to Michael, what would be your advice to entrepreneurs out there looking at specialty markets and things that you would have wanted to know before getting into the business? I know it's a family business, but I mean, what are some of the things that you would actually give as an advice to people thinking about launching a food business right now?
One thing, not on the pessimistic side, but just on the more cautious side, is be aware of the margins that are typical to your industry and work that into your business plan moving forward. It's easy enough to start with a really high priced product and serve it in kind of a niche, really niche way locally. But then to know if you can move forward to a broader market at a certain price point and still be profitable enough to make it worth it and to make it a sustainable venture in the first place is very important. The other thing I'd say is focus on the product first, because if you have a great product, it'll sell itself. And I'm, of course, very lucky that I get to sell ice cream. It tends to be not very hard to sell.
Yeah, you make a lot
different
of good
stories.
friends.
Yeah, exactly. Different story in January and February sometime. That is where ice cream gets challenging. But, generally ice cream is easy to sell. But I guess it's easy that out.
It's easy to sell, but because a wonderful product. But at the same time, the shelves are crowded, right? So
yes,
you've got to have
still a competitive space.
Right. Yeah. You got to have a clear point of distribution. And when you talk to grocers who I'm sure love the product and they're like, okay, how does it fit into the shelves? And those conversations must be super interesting for you, right? You've had them with Sobeys and, as they kind of, okay, is there potential for this to go beyond the local community? Those must be super interesting conversations for you, right? Very important.
Yeah, they are. It's a very different thing to try and get on the shelf of a local independent than it is to try and get on a shelf and have a conversation with a category manager at Sobeys who's managing, thousands of SKUs. Yeah. Very different conversation to have. But I would say generally, if your product is exceptional, your customers will make the case for you too. And we've had, Sobeys managers and stores call because there are people that keep bugging them about it. So, if you focus on the product, make sure it's exceptional and make sure that, there's people out there besides you who are passionate about it and in love with it, then you may not have to worry about sales so much, at least at the beginning, because you'll be so backlogged with orders that you don't need to push it quite so hard. People are doing it for you. And that's mostly been our experience, I'm fortunate enough to say.
Well, it's just fantastic. Now, if folks want to learn more about you or your brand, are you a LinkedIn person and where do they go? Are you on socials? Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, I got to update my LinkedIn, so I won't patch that in. I'm not on Instagram, but I know I'm not on Instagram, but the business is, I believe, and I think it's just at Sussex Ice Cream, and you can head to our website to learn more, sussexicecream.ca.
All right. Well, everybody listening, give these guys a follow. It's a great Canadian business. And Jake, thanks so much for joining Sylvain and I on the mic, telling your brand story. And we love to hear this integration of the local, trying to grow, and you're really an embodiment of great entrepreneurship here in Canada. So thanks again for joining us on the mic.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael and Sylvain. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Jake, and all the best to you.
So sticking with ice cream, actually, this is coincidental. A well-known ice cream franchise is freezing prices for the summer. What do you make of this?
Favoris. Do you know, are you familiar with Chocolat Favoris?
I am. Fantastic product.
Oh, yeah, it's just incredible. Product. So, of course, if you, I think it was last week, they decided to actually make an announcement, freezing prices. I think it's just brilliant. A lot of people are sensitive with prices. I don't know if it's going to impact their bottom line, to be honest, because, I mean, I was, because they actually argued the cocoa prices. They do use a lot of cocoa, but it's
probably already in the barn, though, you would think. the product's already in a warehouse.
They front bought a lot of that stuff. So, but I think it's a good marketing strategy. I think for them, and because of course. The thing about Charlotte Favoris is that they do offer a really, really high quality product, and but it comes at a price, and so this
it's
summer
a super premium. It's a premium product. It comes at a premium
exactly,
price,
and so they don't want to scare off people who may be shopping around for ice cream, and so that's why it's one way to eliminate that argument altogether.
All right. Well, I'll be sure and have some of that. No, all I'm thinking about is ice cream now. Let's end on a quirky note. So I don't know if you've ever watched these hot dog eating competitions.
Oh goodness, no!
Like
they're disgusting.
Food,
seriously,
the amount of food. So Joey Jaws Chestnut, who is the Nathan's famous 4th of July.
Have you ever seen him?
Guy.
Have you ever seen him?
Unbelievable.
Do his thing.
Unbelievable. Like dip it in water. They what is his record? Get this. His record, which is 76 francs and buns in 10 minutes. That's his world record done in 2021. The guy's a phenom. But then there's been a dust up in the hot dog eating thing. He is gutted, he said, without a sense of irony whatsoever. His quote is, "I was gutted to learn from the media that he is banned from the competition." I guess there's some conflicts here. But what do you make of the hot dog?
Well,
eating?
do you know why it was banned?
No.
Yeah, he was banned because he basically decided to endorse a rival product. But here's the thing:
is that biting the hot dog that feeds you, or something? Could we put that in that category?
I don't know if he actually had a contract not allowing him to do that. But here's the thing: the rival company, the rival product is plant-based.
Ooh.
I think that's really the problem here.
Oh, interesting.
The hot dog people don't like plant-based.
Mike,
you
drop
like the hot dog.
Behind the scenes factoid. I had no idea why you put this on our list to talk about, but there you go. You mic drop right there.
That's the twist. I think that's the twist. I think it really bothered a lot of people. And on July 4th at that festival, got a bunch of people. They love hot dogs. They love meat. They love to see people puke, whatever.
I don't know.
And they actually dip hot dogs into water.
Yeah, they soften the bun to soften the bun. I've seen these things.
Like seriously, like
I've seen these
why?
Things go anyway.
Like why do that to yourself?
It's quirky.
Anyway,
but you're quirky. I'm quirky.
Banned,
everybody's a bit quirky.
So we're gonna have a new champion because he ended up endorsing a plant-based product. I think that's really what happened there.
Oh, that's a bold statement. So the mustard belt will go to someone else, apparently.
Exactly.
There you go. All right. Well,
I thought it was a ketchup belt. Or mayonnaise?
Well, they call it the mustard belt anyway, but whatever.
They should have plant-based competition.
Well, that's a quirky way to that's a quirky way to end the pod. I wanted to let everybody know that next week we'll have the wonderful Colleen on from Cattle, who's done some interesting research about a question you and I have had around cashiers and associates sitting versus standing and what people thought of them. So the research is in the house. We have it. We've seen it. You haven't. But you'll hear all about it next week from our wonderful guest, Colleen from Cattle. And we'll also have some other guests. Vancouver, we'll have folks in the Vancouver Food Bank next week. So this is a Blockbuster episode. Next week's Blockbuster episode. We're coming to the end of our season. Though all summer we're going to have fresh-baked content recorded at Seattle. Lots of great interviews. So don't worry. We're not, the pod's not going away as we get ready for season 5, which will launch late August. And we'll have a new logo and some other stuff underway too. So there you go.
Oh yeah. And a new jingle.
All right. And a new jingle, right? You're tired of the jingle too. We're going to make a new jingle. It's my summer project. I'm Michael LeBlanc, consumer growth consultant, keynote speaker, media entrepreneur, and a bunch of other things. And you are?
I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Well, everybody, safe travels. Have a great week in front of you, and we'll talk to you. Sylvain, I'll talk to you next week, and everyone, you'll hear from us next week.
Take care.